when you feel anxious, your urge is to mostly leave. Like we have other reactions to anxiety. Like there's the fight, which we normally wouldn't do. There's the freeze, which can sometimes happen. But fleeing, we usually just want to leave or just avoid it altogether.
Mine would be, okay.
Right? So when you actually follow through on that, so when you actually avoid or leave, your reaction or response to that is relief. That's the natural response. And when you feel relief, that reinforces the idea that leaving and avoiding works for anxiety.
And that
in the short term.
That starts a shitty cycle.
Exactly. Because what happens is when you keep leaving and avoiding, your anxiety gets bigger and bigger and bigger about whatever you're leaving and avoiding. So the skill is approach. Approach the things that you are anxious about. And it seems very simple, but it can be quite complicated for people depending on what it is. There's so many individual differences in what we feel uncomfortable with, what we feel anxious about, how resilient we are. It has to do a lot with our support systems, how we grew up, the beliefs that we grew up with, how we talk to ourselves, the circumstances that affect our personal lives. We're all so different for so many different reasons. So, that's part of, I guess, what I do for a living is to try to help people understand, like, whoa, where did it come from? But not spend a whole lot of time on the why and spend much more of the time on the what now. What do we do about it now? Okay, we know you're anxious about this. We know that what you're doing about it isn't particularly effective.
It is nice, though, to know the why. It's like, okay, well,
Absolutely.
That's there for this reason.
Yeah.
So at least I know it's not just like I'm not sick.
You absolutely put it in context, and it's absolutely imperative to do some work on the why, but you don't want to get stuck there. People get stuck in the why, and they're not doing anything about it.
They never solve. They never look at. They never solve.
And sometimes the answer is never satisfying. So they just keep looking, and it's like, well, you can spend your lifetime looking, but if you actually want to live a better life, you need to do things differently. Because I have two businesses. I have my private practice, which is my psychology business. And that's humming along nicely. And I keep that nice and small and contained and limited so that I can do the other parts, which is the Skills for Life stuff. And Skills for Life is really it's not about therapy. It's about skills training. It's about, well, what are the skills that are going to help people have the best quality of life?
Business owners particularly suffer because not just are they carrying their own issues and then having to contain them frequently throughout the day, all the time, but then they've got to deal with everyone else's issues. Someone else has a sick mom, or someone else has a divorce going on, or and you're having then to handle your team's issues, and then you got family, and then you got all this energy that has to flow out of you to the people around you. That's draining.
I've seen people, business owners who have that level of stress.
And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what advice do you have for the listeners and members? How do you encourage them to handle that? Because you do have to contain. You can't be weak. When you are weak, people, you know what I'm saying.
I would use different words, of course, Daniel.
I know, but my job is to use the really layman and kind of how someone else might say it.
So what I would say to a business owner who, has those struggles, which is pretty much all of them, is make sure you've got somebody to talk to about it. So whether that's your CUB group, community, or whether that's, you've got your own mentor, or whether that's, like for psychologists have somebody all the time. Like because what we do is draining, and we do have our own lives.
I can imagine what you do being extremely draining.
Well, see, draining is to me the wrong word. I feel like it has the potential
energy
to
exhausting.
Be. It can be tiring because you are putting so much of your energy into listening and to understanding and helping someone through their issues.
You're having to deal with other people's problems and feelings.
Right. And so I find it quite energizing. I don't actually find it draining to do that work, but after, you do that with 6 people in one day, which is my absolute limit, then it's really important to take care of yourself. And part of the process of taking care of yourself is to talk to somebody who knows exactly what you do and what it's like. And so in psychology, we have to have someone we call a supervisor. That can be a peer person or someone who's ahead of you, like in experience, to talk to about what's going on. But in other industries, you don't have that.
No, that what's so interesting about that is I reckon that's the number one reason members join CUB is just to have friends that they relate to, that they can say, you know, when COVID's happening, oh my God, like I think I'm worried my business is going to die. Oh, me too. Oh, okay, well, that's normal. Everyone else is worried about that. So when everyone around you is just like you, like I'm normal.
That's exactly right. I think you nailed it there because I think a lot of
I'm not crazy.
A lot of issues come about because what's going on in your head, you think you're the only one. And actually, and like if you have the mindset of like things are going on in your head that you don't particularly like or you feel uncomfortable with, but you're like, everyone thinks this. You're going to think very differently about that. You're not going to be so judgmental and hard on yourself about it. It's like, no, this is part of life. This is just what happens in our heads sometimes.
You know who's done it the best? After meeting you, I'm convinced he's a genius. Your husband. He literally married a psychologist. He could speak to you about everything. He's got the best. But I'm actually going to go like find a psychologist to marry because it's.
I don't know if you're going to like it.
It's the best. You can always talk to someone about things.
You know what's funny? That
Genius.
When you talk about like, I was talking about professional stance. Like I am not a psychologist at home. So I express a different side of myself at home than I do at work. I like to think of it as like we have 3 states of mind. So this isn't just coming from me. It's coming from really good psychological theory. Emotion mind. So emotion mind is when you've got that intensity, you know, like your emotions are in control. Like you're saying, like passion and anger and, you know, they live there and they're making your choices for you. And then you've got your kind of rational or more logical mind. And that side is devoid of emotion. It's not paying attention to emotion. It's just like, what do I need to do? I'm going to get it done. What's the logical, practical kind of thing to do? And they both have their strengths and their weaknesses, right? So sometimes when you're an emotion mind and you've got like passion or love, and, you know, that can be fantastic to be in that state of mind.
You can also make bad decisions, like
right.
buy something very expensive in the heat of the moment.
That's right. So it's got both sides. So that's my point. My point is that it's not inherently negative to be an emotion mind. It just depends on the circumstances. And that's the same with the logical mind. Sometimes you need to just be logical. Like if you think about a surgeon going in, you know, and doing surgery, you don't want an emotional surgeon. You just want someone to go in and get the job done, right? But then you've got this middle place, which is wise mind. And wise mind is the place where you're able to synthesize and integrate and accept the emotional side and the logical side, and then find like that kind of truth, that intuition, that thing that feels like the right thing, the most effective thing.
And wise mind, is that you'd assume that grows over time because it's kind of your ability to navigate your personal experiences with the other 2 minds.
That's right.
So like when I was younger, you almost don't understand your body and how it works until you're older and you've gone through experiences. And as you get older, you kind of have the third, so emotion, logic, and then your wise mind grows.
It's a learning process.
That's very cool. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that the younger generation, I know you're very young and I'm a lot older than you, but even younger people than you, my children are so much more psychologically minded. They just get taught more about in school now about well-being and about accepting your emotions and, you know, interpersonal effectiveness skills. And they just have this kind of intelligence around other people, and they're naturally more less judgmental as well. It's just it's actually really beautiful to see that.